Chris, over to you. Chris, you're on mute.
How about that? Better?
Great.
All right. Sorry
Welcome.
about that. Classic. I didn't want to interrupt your presentation, Zena. So I think we started recording from the very beginning. So hopefully we're all good, and hopefully you can see my screen. That's a picture of a light bulb and says "Keep innovation focused."
You can indeed.
Fantastic. So good morning, everyone. Thank you to Zena and the Ideas UK team, Alan and that for inviting me to join you today. Today's session's intentionally practical. It's not really about innovation theory or frameworks or methodologies. It's about something more fundamental and, in my experience, a bit more fragile, which is focus. I think most organizations don't struggle because of a lack of ideas. They struggle because focus drifts. Priorities blur, capacity gets stretched, and good initiatives quietly lose momentum. That challenge, I think, is particularly acute in regulated and high trust environments, of which I think many of you are part of, where credibility really is important. So, what I want to share today is just a few simple lenses that you can apply to innovation or change initiatives to help them land, to be well received, being clear on why you're doing it, who it's really for, what value it creates in practice, and how you protect credibility as you execute. And then at the end, we'll just do a quick, short checklist, which hopefully you can reuse in your own work. Just before I introduce myself, is everybody able to quickly just drop in the chat where you're attending from, just so I know, just out of interest? I'm in Dubai, as Zena mentioned. I think there are a few in the UK, probably a few in Abu Dhabi, UK, Dubai. Dubai, fantastic. Just down the road, hopefully. Managed to dodge the Dubai traffic this morning. Abu Dhabi. Welcome, everybody. Um, Thank you for joining us. So, just to quickly introduce myself. So, I run two businesses, CJA Consulting and Mohami.ae. Those who are Arabic speaking can probably pronounce the second one much better than me. But so you have to excuse my pronunciation. Um, but I have spent the last 20 years working mostly with professional services and regulated organizations in the UK, Asia, and the Middle East, despite being from Australia. So 20 years this year since I left Australia. I worked with largely law firms, large ones like Al Tamimi and Company out here for 7 years. Looked after the Abu Dhabi office and the Dubai office, Freshfields, Hogan Lovells in London and Singapore, and other regulated advisory businesses. So what I do now is work a lot with businesses on their focus and their prioritization, especially with project leaders or leaders of organizations who find that things are going really well, where there's some kind of sticking point or choking point where they just can't get over. And usually it's just because they're trying to do so many things at once. So my job is to come in with an external set of eyes and try and help you to get all those ideas out of your head and down onto paper or screen or whatever it may be, and focus. And we tend to find that that way that choke point disappears. So particularly we focus on clarity of audience and value to clear that choke point, and also credibility is really important. So oh, I just didn't show myself. Sorry about that. That's me. That makes more sense, I think. So, most organizations I work with share the same underlying conditions: plenty of ideas, limited capacity, competing priorities, and as a result, diluted outcomes. So, most organizations, I think, don't have an innovation problem. They've got a focus problem. Um, and that's the frame which we'll take today's presentation in. So when focus is weak, initiatives often start with energy, but tend to fade a bit over time, or sometimes fade quite quickly. Things tend to get renamed or reshaped or just quietly parked. The hidden cost is credibility, and people become skeptical then that new initiatives are going to lead anywhere, which makes the next attempt even harder before it even begins. So I think it's important to look at definitions early on. And some of this, I confess, Zena taught me in our podcast we did recently. So I can't claim to have come up with all of these ideas myself, but I was listening, Zena. Um, so creativity is about generating ideas, but innovation is about implementing ideas in a way that creates value. So value is the important bit. That value doesn't necessarily have to mean revenue. It depends what kind of organization you're working in. In many organizations, I think it turns up as time saved or risk that's reduced or costs that were avoided or just even better user experiences or improved outcomes for citizens or for clients. Then again, it can mean obviously money as well and revenue. But the key point is if we can't clearly articulate what value an initiative creates, it does become very difficult to then defend it when pressure comes from above or below. So we're going to look at a few different anchors on how to maintain focus. And the first one I think is why. So when the why you're doing this project or implementing this innovation is vague, then focus does tend to drift very quickly. Projects tend to either expand in scope, or find that you find other priorities start to compete, and decisions become harder to make. So a strong why is really important because it's that underlying stabilizer. It's what you return to when, other decisions come up and trade-offs start to appear, when competing interests start to appear, or when someone is in management or whatever is asking why this matters right now. So I was thinking about examples for this, and I thought of Stripe. Stripe is quite a useful illustration, I think, of the clarity cutting through the complexity. So payments on the surface look like a finance problem, and it's the finance teams that might be having to deal with that and those chasing debts or whatever it may be. But Stripe realized that the real bottleneck was actually developers who simply wanted to build products and get paid without friction. So that could be developers for massive products or developers for even SMEs. And so once it was clear that that was actually where the bottleneck was, not necessarily getting paid, it was, yeah, sorry, not a finance problem. It's how to get paid easily. Then that made everything else quite clear. So simpler tools were in effect, faster launches, fewer dependencies, and clarity about who it really was for removed a huge amount of internal and external complexity. It was that focus. So a simple test you could have is, could everyone involved in the project explain why in one clear sentence that we're doing this? That is the important focus test. So could everyone involved in the project explain the why in one clear sentence? If not, then projects tend to drift later on. Innovations tend to drift. Now, the second anchor is who the innovation is for. So every innovation has a target audience, whether or not it's written down. Sometimes it's just in your head, but someone's behavior has to change as a result of the innovation. Someone has to adopt it and someone has to feel the benefit. So I like to define the target audience very practically. It's the people whose behavior must change for the innovation to succeed. And if you can't name those people or those organizations clearly, those publics, as you say in public relations, then it becomes almost impossible to design adoption, prioritize effort, or measure success. And again, this is where many initiatives start to drift because if you're targeting everyone, that tends to be so vague that you just can't focus anymore and you can't really deliver effectively. Clarity on audience isn't just a strategic exercise, it also directly shapes everyday decisions. So, thinking of an example like Uber. Uber's useful because it was really clear about who it wanted to target from day one. It wasn't built for regulators or for taxi firms. It was built for urban consumers who couldn't reliably get a taxi or get a ride or couldn't get a bus, whatever it may be. They just couldn't get on some public transport. And there's also the drivers that are available who want a flexible income. So because the audience problem had a clear problem, the behavior change was obvious. Instead of opening, calling the phone and calling a taxi, you use an app. You could track the app. The drivers were in close proximity. They could choose where in the city they worked or when they worked, and adoption followed because the audience definition was very precise. And that clarity also meant deliberate exclusion. Uber knew who it was for, at least at the beginning, or who it was not for, which then simplified design decisions, trade-offs, and priorities. So you need to think about clearly who your audience is. The end user or the beneficiary, the sponsor, the decision maker, and I guess blockers or influences that might get in the way in the middle. So does innovation really solve the most important question? Does it solve a real problem for its target audience? And I'd encourage you to test that with three prompts. So, what problem or friction or risk exists today? What changes in practice if this works? And how would the audience describe success in their own words? So, all of these are very much focused again on your target market, on your target audience, on who the user, I guess, of the innovation is going to be, the recipient, the beneficiary. And if you can't answer those three questions, you might have a great idea, but it's probably not going to be a credible innovation project at this point in time. So this also brings us to value, or what I would sometimes describe as commercial focus without being too commercial. Now, commercial, I work a lot with law firms, and commercial is a horrible word. Lawyers hate it. Because lawyers want to be lawyers want to give legal advice. And being commercial is pretty much how they're seen as giving real value to clients. But it can be a bit of a vague word. Um, and often we think commercial, we think money. And it doesn't really mean sales targets. Commercial means being clear about the value relative to the effort and the risk. So some of us here are from the public sector. So again, it's not necessarily a revenue thing, right? It's time saved for the audience. It's fewer errors, faster service, or improved outcomes. In the private sector, yeah, it might be money, it might be revenue, but it also could be cycle time or margin or retention of clients or retention of the audience you're targeting, or risk reduction. So underneath it all, being commercial really means understanding your target audience's problems and designing the innovation you're working on to solve those problems. So Zoom is another good example. Um, Before COVID, Zoom didn't really win that much because it had lots of features, which it did, but that wasn't really why it was winning. It won in the end because during COVID, it delivered something really, really well, and that was reliable video calls. So even when the internet was slowing down everywhere, we could all jump on a Zoom and it was pretty reliable, unlike some of its competitors, which I won't name, but some of its competitors who, some of us struggle with quite a lot. So, and Zoom's had a great win out of that. They've obviously had to innovate and develop quite a lot since then because people have started going back to the office. But it's taught them, it's given them a massive audience and massive credibility already. Um, so just to recap, the feature was the video technology, the value was the confidence and the reliability, and the meetings then simply worked. It just made things really easy. So even strong ideas can struggle if credibility is missing. Adoption, I think, is as much social as it is logical, and trust often matters more than quality of of the innovation or the quality of the slide deck, the presentation you're doing at the beginning to try and impress the stakeholders. If people don't trust the initiative, they wait or they resist or they just quietly ignore it and hope it will go away. So then when that happens, you've done a lot of work and the good ideas then kind of die without much fanfare. And damage, and that obviously, as we said earlier, can damage credibility when you try and do the next attempt at an innovation or an idea. So credibility doesn't happen by accident. It's deliberately thought through. Um, so just recapping it, so clarity of the audience is really important. Who is the work for and why does it matter to them? And why, again, does it matter to you? Um, Evidence is great. Having evidence of early wins in pilots programs or just setting stages where you can feel like you're achieving something and the audience can feel like they're achieving something greatly helps. But again, you need to know your audience for that to know and your publics as to who you're targeting at to measure that evidence and show that evidence to the right people. There's visibility wins through consistent communication. So you want to be able to regularly be in touch with that audience and your stakeholders to ensure that you're showing those wins and showing that you're making progress. And validation, we all know about influencers and how much validation they can have, or how much influence they can have, pardon the pun. But validation from trusted voices, is really important in establishing credibility and maintaining it as well. Um, Sometimes these are thought of as marketing tactics, but they're not just marketing tactics, they're credibility infrastructure, and they're vital. So in high trust and regulated environments, credibility is both fragile and really, really valuable. So innovation theatre, I'll call it, just a lot of seeing things, I guess, theatre and performance, and looks and things being there just for appearance's sake can damage trust quite quickly. So as we kind of covered on the last slide, small focused outcomes um, that are delivered consistently tend to do the opposite. They are the ones that build that permission for future work and help for success in moving forward. And credibility doesn't just unfortunately happen overnight. You've got to really build up to it and build up to and build up to it before you need it. So again, yeah, that is probably communicating with the target audience well in advance before you try and launch a major project, knowing who they are, talking to your stakeholders, whether it's someone senior, more senior than you in the business, or someone more junior, um, running ideas by them, um, running concepts by them, making them feel included. That helps a lot with credibility and shows that you know what you're talking about. And then when you really, really need it, then it's there. So just going back to the example of Zoom, so they managed to scale quite quickly during COVID because they already had enough trust around being consistently reliable long before they actually really, really needed to be, and everyone was using it all at once. So, um, 5 questions that I just wanted us to bear in mind. This has actually gone through quite quickly. So we've got time for a brainstorm in a minute, which should fill up some of the time. But 5 questions to really keep innovation focused, I think, is what we covered today. So, what value will change by introducing this new idea, this new product, this new service, this great innovation, whether it's a massive one or just incremental? What value is this going to change? Um, yeah, look at that. Zena's going to take the words right out of my mouth by the looks of things. She put it in the chat. So what value is going to change? Who's it for? So knowing your target audience will just go back again to thinking about the target audience. So it's someone must change behavior in your target audience. That's what you need to bear in mind. Someone's got to adopt it, and someone's got to feel the benefit. You don't want them feeling the sad face. You want them feeling the happy face and not the angry face. And whatever it may be, someone has to take up the idea, the innovation after you've rolled it out. And most importantly, they've got to feel the benefit of it at the end, right? So Zena said it's trustworthiness equals credibility, reliability, intimacy divided by self-orientation. Um, so that is what we need to remember. So who is it for? Again, you need to know your target audience. You need to know who is this actually for. If you're in the public sector, it's maybe for the general public. It might be for a specific part of the general public. You need to really know who your audience is, who your company serves, who your innovation serves. It's quite simple, I guess, at the bottom of it. But yeah, who is it for, and what problem there are we solving that's going to fix the problems that person has, give them a solution. Um, what values are going to change in practice? So you've got to make sure that it's not being done just for innovation's sake. There needs to be a actual change in value. There needs to be a change in behavior, and there needs to be a change in understanding, I guess, some sort of result. And prioritization. So what are we stopping or deprioritizing to make this real? If you can answer all these five questions pretty clearly, then you're well, I think, on track uh, to making the innovative idea, the innovation translate into real outcomes. So I've done about 20 minutes of talking now. We've got, I think, a bunch of different people in the room. People from the NHS, from Dubai, Abu Dhabi. I think Adnoc maybe may have been there. Um, Quite a lot. So I just wanted to have a little think. I'm not sure if we can do this verbally. It might have to be in the chat. But if anyone's got any other ideas about thinking about the target audience, maybe if I've missed anything, or if there's perhaps if you're comfortable, like something innovative or a change initiative you've worked on that we might be able to think about in the lens of where it's worked quite well and who the target audience is.
So please do put anything into chat. Sorry if I stole your thunder a bit with the trust equation, Chris, but when I was thinking, when you were talking about kind of credibility and trust, it just sprung to my mind in terms of that, the intimacy piece is really understanding your customer. And I think that's what we're talking about. Who is that target? Who is that person that the change is for? And do we really understand their needs? I think empathy mapping for me is a really great method of kind of almost getting under the skin of individuals as well and truly understanding their needs, what they're seeing, what they're hearing, what they're feeling, who's influencing them, etc. So, any other thoughts from anybody else? Please do pop that into the chat around target audience. I think the other thing that really struck me was as much as who is your target audience, who isn't. I think you
Yeah.
use that example with Uber, and I think that's something we don't always think. We try to be so inclusive, it's everyone. But actually, is it? And narrowing it down and putting guardrails around it can be critical.
Yeah, so that's actually an important one in a lot of the work that I do, Zena. So I said I work a lot with those in professional services. So I guess professional services are people like lawyers and accountants and doctors, coaches, people, I guess that it's a hard definition, but people who essentially sell their time or their advice or their service for money. So if you think about a lawyer, for example, the way they make money is they give legal advice. And the way I tend to help them is because when they're junior lawyers, they just do law. When they more senior lawyers, they just do law still, and their relationship with clients is very transactional. The deal they're doing, the dispute, whatever it may be. One day they wake up and their partner in the business and they become a business person. They go into the office thinking, I'm going to make a ton of money, and they probably will make a ton of money, but someone complains, like one of the clients complains, and they think, okay, don't worry, the partner will handle it. And then they think, oh, hang on, I am the partner. This is my problem now. So you've got to whip the team into shape. You've got to bring that client back on board, make them happy, make sure that the advice you're giving them is correct, make sure that they're happy with the pricing. And, this is a lot. This is a lot to get in that business mindset, and understanding sort of who your target market is now. Um, so yeah, that's I think something interesting. Zena, you actually gave a good example when we did the podcast together of the broadband provider that you use now. Maybe you can tell us just briefly about that, if you don't
Yeah, I
mind.
think no, absolutely. I live in the middle of the countryside, so miles away from any proper internet connection. And I think whatever you think of Elon Musk, I have to say his internet service, Starlink, is fantastic. I mean, the fact you can now get internet pretty much anywhere in the world. So, surrounded by sheep and countryside, I can still work from home and have a reliable internet connection. I think it's for me, it's not just about that internet connection, it's about the confidence that I can do my job without worrying. And the peace of mind that has given me is actually quite incredible. Through COVID, it was pretty awful. Despite Zoom trying to work from home on really, really slow speed. So I think that for me has really revolutionized the way I live and work and the confidence I have that I can deliver my job as expected and won't let people down. And that is way beyond having an internet connection. And I think that when we're thinking of target audiences as well, it's not just about what are you delivering. So the functional features of something, it's those actual benefits. As I say, I got great internet connection, but for me, the benefit is peace of mind. Um, it's not letting my customers down. And that is the huge benefit for me. But that wouldn't necessarily be the same for everyone. So I think that knowing your customer piece comes back to it. It's you've got a feature of a product, but what's the benefit for those individuals? And I know we've got a couple of comments in the chat as well now too. I don't know, Chris, if you want to read those, or I can.
Yeah, I was just going to say on the Starlink example, like my my brother-in-law and sister live in Canberra in Australia, and it's the capital city, and they've got Starlink despite the fact they're in the middle of a city because it's faster than the broadband that they get. Their neighbors can get really fast broadband, and they can't, and it's a house along. So Starlink, I think, wasn't even invented for consumer internet, but that's what it's ended up being for. And as you said, Zena, it's not really much more expensive than the standard fiber broadband. And we're very lucky in the UAE because we've got good fast fiber broadband everywhere. But
Yeah,
certainly the odd times it's gone down, you realize just how much you rely on it, not just for your Netflix and watching sport and all that sort of stuff, but you can't work, you can't do anything without the internet. Nothing much is available offline. So yeah,
absolutely.
so Lindsay, thank you for your compliment. That's very nice. So Lindsay said, excellent presentation. Always get the target audience in a room for so they can understand why before they co-design the innovations and improvements to encourage grassroots improvements. And then, yeah, as you say, along the line, you share all the small ones um, and small visible outcomes build permission. Yeah, I think that is right. I mean, yeah, that's it's just showing that incremental process and keeping people regularly updated and showing that it's not just going to happen sometime in the future. Um, the small improvements are really important for keeping your target audience happy and your stakeholders. Alan said, in my experience, it's important to make sure innovation is within the scope of the target audience in order to engage them in matters they can truly influence. That's a good one. That is a very good one as well. Um, And as you say, Zina, I'm not actually really an innovation expert. I've learned quite a lot over the last few weeks. So my expertise is more around knowing your target audience and focusing on that. Um, we do have some innovation managers in the room who might be able to give me and the rest of us probably some really good tips. Uh, in the meantime, I can share what I've done with some of my clients. So work a lot with professionals, but also what they tend to find is that they are often either being given a really big target that they're not really sure if they could achieve. So one guy I worked with last week has just been promoted to head of department within a tax and advisory firm, and he's been given a massive budget or a massive revenue target, and he's just falling to pieces about how on earth am I going to reach it? It's more than double what it was last year. Like, what are we going to do? And just with sitting with him for so 3/4 of a day, um, we were able to just get all the ideas out of his head because he had all these ideas. He knew kind of the ways that he could do it. It was just getting those ideas out of his head and onto paper. And then, speaking to someone independently, I guess, who could just kind of help you extract those ideas, um, really helped him. So the outcome has been that he's actually thinks he can exceed that target now because he's like, okay, we've got all these potential stakeholders we can talk to. There's all these lines of business that I was thinking about. I had up here, but I just needed to get it out. So that is, as Lindsay kind of alluded to, it's meeting regularly. It's getting those ideas out on the table that can really drive things forward. But a lot of professionals as well tend to just try and target everybody. And that's a lot of work I do with the business to come in and say, actually, who is your ideal client profile? Who is who are the ideal collaborators who can work alongside you and help you to reduce the workload and bring in the relevant expertise? That's one we probably didn't cover very much today, but uh, it is really important to think you're not on your own and that there are others who can really help you to deliver projects. So if I think of myself as a fractional chief marketing officer, I do a lot of marketing and business development strategy. Working with like a fractional chief financial officer is really handy because they can see the books of the organization. They can see where the revenue gaps are, but there's nothing they can do about it. All they can do is tell the organization, you've got to save money. If they talk to me, I can say, okay, I can't see the books, but now I know we've got to make this gap in revenue. And these are the things we can do about it and actually come up with a plan as to how to fix it. So collaboration is, I think, really important when you're trying to bring change and improvement.
I think that's a really, really good point, actually. And I think, we talk a lot about internal brainstorming and, a within organization approach, but actually, you know, who are the strategic partners who can really, really support you to deliver that goal, who maybe have a piece of technology that you don't have, a piece of IP that could really, bring your innovation to life, that could add that extra dimension. It's also getting those end users, like Lindsay says, involved right from the get-go. So we not just think we know what they want, but we actually know what they want. I think that can make a big difference too. So we've got a comment in there from Hanan, who I know uh, runs, or certainly is part of the team that runs a highly successful innovation program in AD Ports Group. So she says, when we introduce a new idea or initiative, we look at what signals tell us early on whether it will gain real traction or quietly stall. That's an interesting one.
Yeah.
Maybe having metrics in place from the get-go. So many times we implement things, but we don't see the realization of that true benefit. And I guess it's also then knowing when to kind of stop early as well. So not to just continue on because we're so wedded to this individual idea or innovation that we're going to launch it at all costs. I think we've seen that on numerous occasions. Um, and Alan asked a question of all the things that you've mentioned today. This is a question to you, Chris. What have you found that companies find the most difficult?
I think it's the focus thing. If you think of focus as an umbrella, that would be how I'd overall term it. But individually, it's probably a couple of things. I think trying to keep money in mind without thinking about money as being the motivator or the end goal. Um, you obviously got to keep a budget in mind in what you spend, but you also need to not just be focused on money. The idea is to think, I guess, more commercially, as we talked about. It's not about necessarily about money. It's about understanding what your target audience, your target market needs. Um, that's the thing I think that they find most difficult is to think, okay, what put yourself in that audience's shoes. Uh,
Yeah.
it's a struggle. A lot of it's just very much understand our own thoughts and have our own perspectives, and just understanding others is really, really difficult, especially as a business person. So I think that's probably the thing they find most difficult is to often revenue or something especially in the private sector is most important at the forefront of the mind of why people want to bring out a new product or a new innovation, or save money. But it's trying to sort of get that out of your mind and think, okay, what does my audience actually need? Which then actually, ironically, results in revenue generally if it's successful, or in the case of the public sector, efficiency.
And that's really, really interesting you say that, because I guess that harks back to that diagram I pulled up at the beginning of ISO 56001 in terms of what should a great innovation system look like. And it starts with the why and it ends with the value. So what is that value add to your target audience? And that kind of underpins the whole of the system. So has anyone got any final questions for Chris? I have to say, Chris, I do agree with Lindsay. That was a really clear presentation. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
O-
Just
Okay,
before
so
I end, I want to
yeah,
give, it's
please
kind of a little
do.
plug, but it's also just something that I've been trying to work on in an innovative way, as an innovation, which has I've experienced the same challenges as what I've express today. So I built this platform called Mohami. I built it because when I first started targeting lawyers and law firms to sell my consulting services to work with my marketing business development, I said to them, like, what's your biggest challenge? What do you need help with? And they all said, Chris, we just need more clients. And the trouble with being a lawyer is that no one wants to talk to you until they absolutely need to. Either it's a great thing because they're doing a deal or they're selling something or they're, drawing a contract or employing someone big or something like that, or it's a bad thing because they're being sued or they're suing someone, there's some kind of a dispute. But at that point in time, that's when you're like, I really need a lawyer. And so the lawyers have to be there in the right place at the right time. They have to be well known out there. They have to have a good reputation. They have to have really good referral network and collaboration networks. Um, so there has to be a client with a need, in other words. And I was like, okay, so lawyers need a client with a need. But then there's a lot of people every day that I see on the Facebook groups and WhatsApp groups, community groups I'm members of who are asking legally related questions and they can't get a straight answer. You ask things like, oh, my landlord's doubled my rent. What do I do? And people will give you 10 different answers. 10 different people give you 10 different answers, and they all are very well meaning and they want to give you the truth. And they're all 10 portions of the truth, but they're not right on the money. So Mohami, for those who speak Arabic, know it means lawyer or attorney in Arabic. But the idea is you go to Mohami, you can find a legal answer. If you can't find it, then you can go to one of the lawyers on there or to me for help. So this is my kind of way of trying to innovate a little bit. It's not as innovative as it could be. Hope it's going to keep growing, but again, I'm trying to bear in mind the target audiences, and kind of keep it in shape for that. And it is quite a challenge. So if anyone visits the site and has some thoughts or wants some content or anything, let me know. I'd be very grateful, and tell your friends about it as well.
Thanks, Chris. And we'll make sure that we circulate all of your contact details as well when we send out the recording to everyone. So if you do want to get in touch with Chris, there's his details on the screen now. Then I know he would love to hear from you. So just brings me to say thank you so much, Chris. I think that's really informative. I think knowing who our target audience is actually so critical to so much of what we do. And the starting with the why is just key. For those of you who are regulars, or if this was your first time you've joined us, then please do join us again next month. So we're back literally in a month's time on Tuesday, the 10th of March. And we have a regular favourite of our InnoHive, Therese Reichenberg, talking about the 6 habits that help leaders stay productive while fostering innovation. So do
Love
join
it.
us on the 10th of March. Same time, same place. We look forward to seeing you then. And thank you again, Chris.
Thank you for having me.